this is something, these last two plays are some successful plays, some runs against them that I wanted to talk about. If I'm running against Denver, anything to do with removing and adding gaps. So we could do some split zone if we want to get into it, but I really like the gap scheme runs, your traditional gap scheme runs, or if you want to do some stuff with some Allen keeper stuff, some read elements, or you want to do QB bash and counter and all that. But the gap scheme runs that teams have leaned into, you saw from a variety of teams, anything to get downhill, really use that lead blocker and attack.
Yes.
The ability to add and remove gaps. You can get this Broncos team. I'm going to show two of the same plays, partly because we talked about it in the film room and we loved it. We talked about that blast motion from Alec Anderson that we started to see the past couple weeks and flirt a little bit, and how the Bills are running counter out of pistol with it. Mm-hmm. You get that here, not counter, it's power. But yep, you're going to get that blast motion from the tight end. Then you're going to get the guard coming behind him. So you are going to get the kick out block from technically your fullback here, Scott Matlock, who's aligned in more of an H. But essentially, this is just power with a blast motion, a different.
He's over 300 pounds, isn't he? So he is like an offensive lineman. He is like Anderson, honestly.
Yeah, he's a big dude. I love that aspect about the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh's commitment to just old school smash mouth football knows no bounds. And
totally his identity.
So, yeah, absolutely. So blast motion, heavy personnel. Look at what you got. Let's watch Matlock come in. There you go. There's that blast motion. Who's he going for? He's going for Tillman.
Yeah.
Bang. Let's pop in. Here comes the pulling guard. Now, this all gets muddied a little bit, right? And so Dobbins does a good job reading this, adjusting his path. Gaps available. Set my man up. Bang. Gets downhill. Yep. And you will see this. I have two examples of it, this one and another, but you will see the Broncos defense, again, because of how stout they are, they'll do a good job kind of muddying this up a little bit, muddy up these gap runs, but there are lanes available. I mean, even, again, Malcolm Roach here, watch just what he does. Like, he takes on the center, and he's reading, okay, let me shed. I'm in this spot. Okay, he tries to shed again. Bang, let me pop back out here. But now he and Jones are in the same gap. There's the alley for Dobbins, and there he goes. I do think you can get this team with gap runs, particularly counter. We don't see the Bills do a lot of power. Who knows? Maybe they will. But anything to pull guys, if we're doing dart, if we're doing the tackle pull stuff, anything to add and remove gaps, I think that's the method of success against this defense.
Yeah, the Chargers did a great job with that against the Broncos D. The Ravens did. They use again, you see this play where that blast block there, blast motion, and then a backside puller. Yeah, the Bills don't pull their guards a lot, but they can do this with trap. They can use Anderson in the very same way. Last week against the Patriots, the Bills ran Gilliam on a lead where he was in a strong I formation. They pitched it out there, and he cleaned up the edge player. This is the type of stuff you're going to have to do because you want to get into that C gap. You want to get between the edge player, 92, and then the next defensive end down lineman right there. You want to get to that C gap right there. And so that you can kind of crease the edge of that defense. And so Bills did it with some pitches last week. To Ray Davis. Gilliam was kicking out Anthony Jennings of the Patriots. And so the thing that a lot of teams are doing against the Broncos, like you see here, is using some kind of lead blocker. Sometimes it's this extra, this fullback. Sometimes it's an offensive lineman. Sometimes it's just a true fullback. On lead plays against the Broncos defense, they're surrendering 4.8 yards per rush. It's the highest yards per attempt when you're talking run concepts. 82 attempts for 4.8 yards per rush. This is just an example of that. Again, there are variations to it. You saw the Seahawks use, I think actually we're going to break that play down. They used a tight end, right? They used a tight end, Noah Fant, to be that lead type of guy. That's what you want to do. I don't think the Bills will pull the guards to get to this. I think they will use their tackles, which, again, that throws a wrinkle when it comes to the defensive side of the ball and their keys by pulling tackles on these type of plays.
Absolutely. And that's exactly where my head was at. Like, I don't think we're going to see this exact thing from the Bills. They're not out here pulling Edwards a ton. They're not going to really pull Torrance either, but it's this idea of adding and removing gaps, pulling your dudes. Could do it with the tackles, with how athletic they are. As I know you've talked about it a bunch, it's Reggie Gilliam season. So start to unleash Reggie Gilliam.
Yes.
This, and again, from a Bills perspective, we know they will, maybe not necessarily this piece, but what do we got here? Heavier personnel, condensed formation, reduced formational width, all of this, like some of this plays into the Bills' hand naturally a little bit, even though they don't have necessarily like a monster at fullback. Gilliam can get the job done as that sledgehammer as is evidenced by his Twitter handle and name.
Yes.
Here's another example, different little bit of a different presentation from the Seahawks, but you've got 2 tight ends. This time Fant is in line and is the other tight end who is hipped off. We're going to get the exact same idea again. We're going to get blast motion. So this tight end's coming across. He is taking out the edge. Then we're going to get the pull from the guard right here to lead it through. But again, just an example, add and remove gaps. You want to use some motion. You want to attack. This is where this Broncos defense can be had. That's a legitimate hole for Kenneth Walker to run through. And it's just the way that you see this repeatedly against the Broncos defense. When they get got, it's against these gap scheme runs and these lead runs, as you mentioned as well.
Yeah, you just want to get just off the hip of the tight ends, or in ghost tackles, or it's just something with the 5-man surface usually of the Broncos defense. That gap right there, man, that's where you want to hit, and so you want to kick a guy out, whether that's with the guard or like you see here, that tight end coming across the formation. I think the Bills are going to do this. I think Gilliam is going to be a huge part of this, as we see late in the year, every year. He plays a lot of snaps this time of the year, and I think they'll use Anderson in that boat. They're going to get creative, and it's going to be interesting to see how long they stay committed to it, because I do think that, again, that the Broncos defense, they're a stout unit, but if they can get to the edge and the perimeter of this defense, they will stay committed to it.
Yeah, and I wonder how much too the Bills, maybe do we see, some kind of spread, but to run it instead of, do they lean in and run the ball with the condensed looks, or do you go more spread to run the ball? And now we're tying in the Allen run game, Allen's legs. We know how much they love all the tackle pull stuff out of shotgun. Right. Like, is that how you're trying to remove gaps and kind of add them and attack that 5-man surface? I think there's multiple ways to do that. And honestly, too, obviously that involves the running backs, but another topic that we want to get into now, running backs in the pass game. I wanted to add in some, because there's clips of the Broncos literally getting got on mesh rail. And I was like, oh my God, the Bills run mesh rail like literally like every friggin' game. But the running backs are going to be an important piece of this game overall, but especially in the pass. The Broncos are 31st in DVOA against running backs. Yep. We talked about, I think actually the very first thing we ever talked about when Joe Brady took over for Dorsey was his ability to use the running backs in the pass game. So this is a big one to kind of,
but they weren't doing anything different than Dorsey. It's okay. It's all right. It's all right.
Man, I don't have time for people, but yeah, running backs in the pass game. Yeah, let's talk about it.
I mean, like you said, 31st versus running backs in DVOA. They've surrendered. The Broncos defense has surrendered 85 completions, 651 yards, 6.4 yards per attempt, and 6 touchdowns to running backs alone. And we're going to show you a couple ways with some stats and film and how they did it. You just alluded to it. They give up a lot of wheel routes and a lot of flare routes. Wheel routes, they've surrendered 5 of 6 for 124 yards and 3 touchdowns. And flare routes, 37 for 42 for 231 yards and 1 touchdown. And so you're going to see a bunch of those plays right here. And of course, this is in the Bills offense. It's one of their main ways of attacking. It's one of the ways they've increased their yards after catch per reception, getting the ball to the running backs quickly on flare routes, whether they're like swings that turn in the rail or wheel routes, or just rail routes out of the backfield, which we'll show you here in a couple minutes. It's something that the Broncos just always surrender, because sometimes you're having that edge guy drop out. And again, he's not the most adept in coverage, and he gets out leverage, and that happens from time to time. So you're going to see running backs get leverage on the defense for big plays, especially if we're talking wheel routes, as you're going to see here in a minute. And the Bills, they generally like to attack with their wheel routes to running backs when it's man coverage. Usually when it's zone coverage, they're going to use the curl swing. So kind of like those flare routes and swing routes that you saw, they're going to use a curl by the number 1, and they'll swing the running back out and flare him out. And then if he doesn't get the ball, he'll wheel up the sideline. But the Bills got to get the ball to these running backs early and often, because, and I think that's the key to the game, because you want them early in the read so that they can do stuff, do something with it after the catch.
The one I debated putting in was the one to Justice Hill from the Ravens. So
we know that all too well, don't we?
Yeah, we feel
that happened to us.
Yeah, I would say it happened to the Bills. For that touchdown. I think for the 3rd touchdown of the game. Yeah, they're so vulnerable, I think, in this aspect. One, because, and you alluded to it, like that odd front 3-4 base, if they're dropping edge guys or if they're supposed to peel out with that running back leverage mismatch, that can be a problem. But then you pair that also with the linebacker position we talked about. Broncos eighth highest cover one rate on the year at 29%, seventh highest man coverage rate at 36.4, and then they're 15th in single high rate at 54.3. As we've seen in several of these clips for the Broncos, as we are seeing right now on this, what should have been a touchdown to James Cook, as we saw on the touchdown to Ray Davis against the Dolphins, if you're going to play man, your linebackers are most likely going to be that conflict player against mesh rail or slither or whatever type of running back design play out of the backfield like that the Bills love to hit. Your linebackers are going to have to cover. They have to be solid. They're going to be tested. And that is an area of the Broncos that is a vulnerability, and even more so in the coverage structure and scheme that they play and how they can be attacked and how easy it is for the Bills. Like, this is Brady's MO. Like, get the running backs involved in the pass game is, again, literally the thing we led with when we talked about the offensive coordinator change last year.
And I just love how they get to these, these wheel routes. So the Bills have completed 6 for 7 for 169 yards and 1 touchdown. But it should have been 7 for 7 and a touchdown with that James Cook drop. So they are very good on these wheel or rail routes. But why I find it so fascinating when it comes to these routes and route concepts is, yes, they're targeting the running backs, as you see Ty Johnson here, but they get to it from so many different ways.
Multiple presentations, personnel, formation, alignment. Yes.
Empty set here. He's the third receiver to the top of the screen, and they're setting a little rub, a little pick for him. He's running the wheel. Big play here. Again, against the Lions. That's the defense I think that most resembles the team we're going to see this coming week.
And we talked about, real quick, that one too. They ran that against the Texans. It didn't work because Knox didn't hit his right depth. They course corrected, fixed it, and it worked on that play against the Lions that we saw.
So here's another wheel or rail. Ty Johnson in the backfield, sneaks out the backfield against a linebacker, right? Cover again, that man coverage beater, getting the matchup of running back on linebacker. A really nice dime here from Josh. So you could see the different ways that the Bills got to it. Here, they're much like that last play. They snuck Cook out through that B or C gap. Unfortunately, he drops it here. This is that curl wheel. So usually when it's zone, say it's cover 3, it's a single high cover 3 look, you're having the number 1 kind of set a little rub here and a curl, and then you're just swinging it. It's not immediately turning it into that wheel route like you see here, but you see James Cook look up ahead and say, oh man, I have some green, and then he turns it upfield. So there'll be some ways for them to attack these single high coverages that the Broncos play, whether it's cover 1 or cover 3, because they do play cover 3 a lot. Man or zone, they will have these wheel routes and these flare routes to their running backs in the playbook, in the strategy this week. If they don't, they're not doing their job.
Completely agree. And for a team like the Broncos, who can pressure the quarterback, ideally want to and will pressure the quarterback, again, they're second in blitz rate. They make your running backs work in terms of pass protecting, in terms of supporting the quarterback, playing that role. I wonder if this is a big Ty Johnson game in some way, because he is their best pass protector, but also he can function in this way in a multitude of spots. So if you want to keep him in and pass protect, cool. If you want to send him out on the swing or the wheel, or let's shift him and put him as that number 3 and go 3-by-2 and then have him out there. I think that's like a nice, fun little wrinkle for James Cook. Has had a phenomenal year.
Yeah.
And honestly should have been a straight up Pro Bowler, even though I don't care about the Pro Bowl at all. And Erik, I'm sure you don't either, but this could end up being a big Ty Johnson game because of what he is as a pass protector, his value as a receiver and runner at the same time. Either way, these running backs should eat because of the matchup, because of the position group at linebacker for the Broncos, and then how adept Brady is at just scheming up these running backs all the time.
And again, it has to be early in the play. They have to be a primary read. I mean, just listen to some of these numbers. Okay, Ty Johnson, 284 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns. You're having James Cook with 258 receiving yards. You have Ray Davis with 189. And so Ty Johnson, 3 touchdowns. James Cook, 2 touchdowns receiving. Ray Davis, 3 touchdowns receiving. But more importantly, the air yards per target for guys like Ray Davis is 0.84. Early, right? You're getting it to him early. That play against, was it the Patriots? No, who was that against when he ran that for the touchdown? Oh, Dolphins,
63-yarder, right? Miami. Allen gets it to him right away because he's quickly, the primary on mesh rail. Yeah. Miami blows it, and Allen hits it to him. It just happens to end up going for a huge house call.
0.84 air yards per target on his reception. James Cook, 0.97 air yards per target on his targets. So getting the ball into the hands of the running backs quickly on those flares, on those swings, on those wheel routes up the sideline, that is the area the Bills have to attack. I think that is a key to the entire passing game. Make them respect that. And if they start doing that and they start just hammering that, the defense has to change, because it's very difficult to defend the running back position and focus on a running back position. It changes a lot of things, and that's how you can really disrupt the game plan of the Broncos.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, taking advantage of the flats and then the middle of the field and putting everybody on that second level under stress, ideally away from whatever side Pat Surtain is on.
Yes, Surtain, yeah.
And go to the other side and just do that.
No, you go that way.
Yeah. Nice. Nice. Yeah. And I really think that's the key to this game, starting with the run is going to matter so much for the Bills in this game. And I think it will for every game, but just the running backs in general, for as much as Surtain is all world. And I feel like the conversation for folks is, Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman or Dalton Kincaid. Give me the running backs. Give me 6 targets for James Cook and like 4 for Ty Johnson and 2 or 3 for Ray Davis. And we talked about it with the checkdowns in terms of, and that's a great point that you put into the chat. Yeah, they're number 1 in DVOA against tight ends, which is, again, you juxtapose that being 31st against running backs.
Yep.
That ability to get the ball and spit it out to them quickly, similar to how we talked about with checkdowns and stuff, right? You check it down while the defense is still getting into their drop. With these ones, they're like quick hitters against man coverage, or with that curl swing we've seen them hit over and over again. That zone coverage isn't yet there. You are out leveraged, you are out spaced, and football at its core is about numbers, angles, and space and leverage. And we've seen the Bills time and time again take advantage of defenses with this type of mode of attack, and it really just feels like it has to be the go-to against Denver.
Yeah, it's got to start there. And Adam asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, how scared are we of this matchup? It's a good way to kind of wrap up this entire scouting breakdown. And again, it's a single elimination game, so of course there is some anxiety from me personally when it comes to this game. And again, it's about matchups. It is always about matchups, and everything on paper screams that the Bills should probably run away with this. But when you break down and you look at the micro, like we just did for the last hour and a half, you can see where there are opportunities for the Broncos to come in and steal this game. All right. There are matchups that they can exploit just as much as the Bills can exploit on them as well. So I do think that there is an opportunity. There is an avenue where the Broncos could come in and you really slow down the Bills offense, because there have been times where these type of schemes have given the Bills offense issues, especially if we're talking like the defensive front versus the Bills offensive front. So I think there are opportunities. Do I think the Bills win? Yes, I do. But I do think that there are going to be some growing pains. And you know what it's going to come down to, as it usually does, is who's adjusting quicker. Who's adjusting quicker at the same time? Who is, obviously scoring points. That's the obvious. But protecting the ball, not giving possessions, not giving points, in opportunities and ways that you hadn't all year. Again, Josh, don't turn it over. Play it safe with the ball. Take your shots when needed in high leverage situations, but play your game like you have all year. Nothing's changed. You've heard them all day today talk about that. Like, hey, this is who we are. We're not going to change. It's not what got us here. Yeah, you're not wrong. So stick to that. Don't give them special teams points. Don't give them turnovers, short fields to a rookie quarterback, points to a defense. Make them earn everything on the road.
Yeah, if I'm doing scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to say like a 6.5, because I can see the plan. Again, we dove into a ton of Broncos tape over these past several days. I do think the Broncos have a blueprint. I hate using that phrase, but of how to have success against the Bills. I don't think offensively they have enough from the personnel and the roster to threaten the Bills enough. If defensively, I think it's a different story with what they have up front and on the back end, not even just Pat, what they have. I just don't think they have the horses from a weapons standpoint. Tight end,
right?
Some fun pieces at receiver, but not necessarily holistic and complete. Some questions with the running backs and how much meat they leave on the bone with the run, like we talked about. Nix has been fine. Sean Payton is tremendous. This offensive line is good. but I think they're deficient in certain areas that doesn't allow them to fully maximize the kind of mismatch that could be created or the vulnerabilities that they could attack. So yeah, I'm going to go with like a 6.5. I do think the Bills should win this game, but I wouldn't be holistically shocked if it's close or if it's a slog or if somehow Denver wins this game, because they do have a realistic path to kind of winning.
Yeah, Bo Nix and the offense has put up, what I think Joe Marino posted some about 30 plus points in the last 7 games. I don't think that's by accident. I think he's settled in. And I think Sean Payton and that staff are doing a great job of getting him in those positions to succeed. And so if that defense, if the Broncos defense can minimize Josh Allen, if they can stymie and slow down pretty much Michael Jordan, if they can slow him down just enough to keep it close defensively, then Bo Nix and that script and their ideal script of possessing the ball but still getting points at the end, because they do get a lot of drives. They're one of the top teams when we talk about drives per game, and again, that's because of the defense.
Yeah.
And so and their special teams giving them good field positions. There are avenues there, guys. There are avenues there. We're not trying to fear monger, but this is what you guys come to the film room for. We just broke it down for over an hour and a half. We got into a lot of the X's and O's, scheme, advanced metrics. This was a lot of work, Anthony, but again, this is the stuff I love. I love being a pretend scout, being a pro scout and getting to watch all this film and, basically attack this episode like we are a coach and a scout and what we need to do as an offense or defense to exploit the matchups, because again, it's a matchup league and there are avenues for the Broncos to win some matchups.
Yeah, these are my favorite episodes to do. And one of these days, actually, we should just show like all the charting we do for like film in general, but then like these episodes, like it's just so much goes into it, but it's awesome and it's so fun and it gets you in tune even more so with an opponent and just football in general. I'm excited for this matchup. I was excited for this episode. It was nice to see how well it was received from a lot of people in the chat. And it was fun to kind of put this together. I think this is sneakily, I think, one of the best matchups of the wild card weekend. Like there's different games that have different, I don't want to say nervous storylines attached to them, and certain matchups in certain ways from like a narrative type of perspective. I'll put it there. But I think from a schematic X's and O standpoint, this game can get really fun, man, especially with Bills offense versus Broncos defense. And I'm going to say this out loud to kind of make it work as an anti-jinx. I fear that game of like Allen turns it over early and it's close and it's muddy and Allen thinks he has to do too much and he's trying to throw, the corner route with Pat in a cloud coverage in cover 2 to the short side and it gets intercepted, or trying to fit the whole shot that he doesn't need to fit a whole shot with. I worry about that because we haven't seen that guy this year.
I know.
And I'm just worried it would be so I'm going to say this because I'm trying to make it not happen. It would be so Billsy for that guy to show up like in this game and things to potentially go sideways. But the good news is you do have a good run game. If you're the Bills, you have a good offensive line. You have a good offensive coordinator. You have a very good offensive line coach. There are pivots. So it's not just on Josh Allen, even though the Broncos can potentially try and make him put on the cape and make him have to be a mutant alien unicorn to get it done. It's going to be a fun one. It's a fun weekend. It's